We recently had a story that Fuji was back in the game making film once again, and that was evidenced by the fact that we had some film stocks coming out of Japan with some fresh dates on them. All that really cool and really exciting. But shortly after that, we were greeted with some rather unpleasant news, and that was that one of Fuji's comrades wouldn't be making the journey with them, and that is Superia 400. So here's the TLDR on Fuji Superia 400. Fuji always marketed Superia 400 as an affordable color negative film. It has an average exposure latitude, it has a very distinct Fujifilm look to it, and I think when you look at a few sample images, you'll see what I mean. Kodak films historically tended to color more warm. Fuji films were always a little cooler. Take a look at those super sexy Fujifilm tones. We're gonna come back to that later. Fujifilm 400 was a very versatile film that performs well in daylight and low light situations. And at box speeds, properly exposed, the film had a very fine grain, medium contrast, and decent enough saturation. You can see that in some of the reds in these images. And the best part of all was the price. Fuji always done a good job keeping the price of Superia Extra pretty low. Even in recent years, as the prices on everything else skyrocketed, Fujifilm Superia 400 stayed about $7, $8, $9 a roll. Not too bad. Be right back, I'm Googling the definition of Stockholm Syndrome. Safe to say, it was one of the most reasonably priced options on the market, and it was the only film stock that I could actually leave my house and go buy from Walmart. Pretty cool. So how did we get here? Film photography's having a moment, after all. It's on the rise. People are making new film stock, and prices are going up, which should mean more profits for companies anyway. So why again are we losing one of the most popular options at 35mm? So in the past few years, and honestly maybe in the past few decades, really the lights on the dashboard for some of Fujifilm's film stocks have been flashing. I mean, on any given day, you can hop on Amazon or B&H and almost all of Fuji's film stock options are out of stock, save for the stuff that they're probably getting from Kodak. We're gonna talk a little bit more about that in a minute too. And to make matters worse, there was the story from 2023 about Fuji shutting down all film manufacture in Japan. Really scary. And for the better part of the decade, like we talked about, there have been many stories out there predicting the demise of Fuji's film stocks, or that Fuji was getting out of the film game entirely. There's the famous rumor that circulates that Fuji's film stocks that are coming out right now are actually just being cut from giant rolls in Fuji's freezer. Now, we don't have a lot of evidence to suggest that's true, but these aren't good signs. And in 2023, like we talked about, Fujifilm issued a statement announcing that they'd temporarily stopped manufacturing photographic film due to difficulties getting a hold of raw materials. At the time, it wasn't too big of a deal, and folks didn't make too much fuss about it. And that was because Fujifilm made it clear in the statement that the suspensions were only temporary, and that at some point in the future, when they got their supply chain issues lined out, the films would be coming back. Hindsight being what it isn't much of a stretch to think that maybe those same supply chain issues that caused Fuji to have to suspend manufacturing their film in 2023 that lead Fujifilm now to the issue that they're having manufacturing Superia Extra 400. And you also coupled that with one of the strangest stories from last year, and that was the announcement of two sort of new film stocks from Fuji, and that was Fujifilm 200 and 400. Those releases were a little strange, a little weird. In fact, they were so weird that I made a whole video just about the topic. I'll link that at the end of this one. From the release of Fujifilm 200 and 400, photographers kind of got suspicious about where these film stocks were coming from. And there was one important indicator right on the box that tipped folks off that maybe something was a little off. And that was that Fujifilm film stocks, apart from Acros that's made in the UK, supposedly by Ilford, all of Fuji's film stocks historically have been made in Japan. But these new boxes of 200 and 400 distinctly stated made in the USA. Now there's only one notable company that makes film in the United States, and I'll give you guys a second to think who that is. Of course, it's Kodak. So while on the face of it, it actually looks pretty great. Fujifilm has came out with two new film stocks, they've secured a manufacturer in the United States, and all is well and good in the film world. We have two new options on the market, and the future of film is further secured. But it's when we look a little closer that that narrative quickly falls apart. After lots and lots and lots of side-by-side comparisons on different photo blogs around the internet, folks pretty quickly figured out that the new Fujifilm 200 was just Kodak Gold 200. The images are identical coming from these two film stocks. And to make matters worse, comparing the new Fujifilm 400 with Kodak's own Ultramax film, those look pretty much the same too. So what that means for you and I is we have these two new film stocks from Fujifilm, but they're really just repackaging, you know, crudely covering over the labeling crayon versions of Kodak's existing film stocks. Gone are those trademark cool tones, those beautiful blue shifted greens that we know and love from Fujifilm, and we have that traditional Kodak warmth. And I mean, let's be clear, we all love the warm images that we get from Kodak's film stocks, but Fujifilm stuff was unique and interesting in its own way. So let's get to the uncomfortable news, the bad part, the announcement that they were discontinuing Superia 400. The statement said this: sales of Fuji Color Superia Extra 400 will end as soon as the stock runs out. In conjunction with this, we will be introducing Fujifilm 400, a color negative film sold overseas in Japan from today. We look forward to your continued patronage of Fujifilm products. So obviously, there's the announcement that Fujifilm is discontinuing Superia 400. All in all, that's really bad news. It's just another feather in the cap for the folks out there that are saying that Fujifilm is walking away from traditional film photography entirely. As the years go on, the film stocks just keep dropping off, and before long, we're just not gonna have anything from Fujifilm left at all. And to me, that's a real shame, because Fujifilm's film stocks were some of the most beautiful films ever created. And as each year passes, Fuji does continue to take step after step away from traditional film photography. That's a bummer. On the macro level, we have one less distinct, different film stock available to us to shoot. And that's a disappointment. But I think the even more disappointing thing is what it says about the industry on the whole. Before long, we're gonna be left with just Kodak out there, being the lone manufacturer of color film. And that puts the entire industry in a really weird place. Let me know in the comments what you think about the loss of Superia Extra 400. To me, it's a real disappointment that we're losing it. And if you want to hear more about Fujifilm 200 and Fujifilm 400 when that was introduced, take a look at this video. But as always, guys, thank you so much for watching. We'll see you next time.